9 people who died twice in the Bible. The Bible records various resurrection accounts. It is a stupendous miracle anytime a person is raised from the dead, proving that the God who is the source of life himself has the ability to give life to whom he will, even after death. In the Bible, the following people were resurrected from the dead and later died in their old age. 1. Zarephath's son's widow. According to 1 Kings chapter 17, verse 17 to 24, Elijah the prophet has raised from the dead the widow of the son of Zarephath. Elijah had remained in the widow's upper room during a serious drought in the region. The widow's son became ill while he was there and died. The woman in her grief brought her son's body to Elijah on the assumption that his presence in her household resulted to her boy's death as a verdict of her past sin. Elijah took the dead boy from her arms, went up to the upper room and prayed, "Lord my God, let the life of this boy come back to him." 3 times as he prayed, Elijah stretched himself out upon the boy, and the Lord heard the cry of Elijah, and the life of the boy returned to him, and he lived. The prophet put the boy in his mother, who has faith in God through the prophet. "Now I know that you are a man of God, and that the word of the Lord from your mouth is the truth." 2. The son of the Shunammite woman. That's according to 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 18 to 37. Elisha the prophet raised up the son of the Shunammite woman from the dead. Elisha frequently stayed in Shunem, in an upper room that this woman and her husband had built for him. One day a young son of the couple died when Elisha was at Mount Carmel. The woman took her son's body to Elisha's bedroom and laid it on the bed. Then, without even saying anything to her husband, she went to look for Elisha. When she met Elisha, she begged him to come to Shunem. Elisha sent his servant Gehazi ahead of them with instructions to lay Elisha's staff on the boy's face. As soon as Elisha and the Shunammite woman arrived back home, Elisha went to the upper room, shut the door and prayed. Then he stretched out on top of the boy's body, and the body began to warm. Elisha arose, walked about the room and stretched himself out on the body again. The boy then sneezed 7 times and awoke from death. Elisha then delivered the boy alive again to his grateful mother. 3. The man raised out of Elisha's grave, and that's according to 2 Kings chapter 13, verse 20 to 21. Apparently, Elisha is connected with another resurrection that occurred after his death. Some time after Elisha had died and was buried, some men were burying another body in the same area. The grave diggers saw a band of Moabite raiders approaching, and rather than risk an encounter with the Moabites, they threw the man's body into Elisha's grave. Scripture records that when the body touched Elisha's bones, the man came to life and stood up on his feet. 4. The widow's son of Nain. And according to Luke chapter 7, verse 11 to 17, this is actually the first of the resurrections that Jesus Christ performed. As the Lord approached the town of Nain, he met a funeral procession leaving the city. In the coffin was a young man, the only son of a widow. When Jesus saw the procession, his heart went out to the woman, and he said, "Don't cry." Jesus came close and touched the coffin and spoke to the dead man. "Young man, I say to you, get up." Obeying the divine order, the dead man sat up and began to talk, and thus Jesus turned the funeral into a praise and worship service. God has come to his people, the people said. 5. Jairus' daughter. According to Luke chapter 8, verse 52 to 56, Jesus Christ showed his power over death by raising the young daughter of Jairus, a synagogue leader. The Lord was surrounded by crowds when Jairus came to him, begging him to visit his house and heal his dying 12-year-old daughter. Jesus began to follow Jairus home, but on the way, a member of Jairus' household approached them with the sad news that Jairus' daughter has died. Jesus turned to Jairus with words of hope. "Don't be afraid, just believe and she will be healed." Upon arriving at Jairus' house, Jesus Christ took the girl's parents, Peter, James and John, and entered the room where the body lay. There he took her by the hand and said, "My child, get up." Her spirit returned, and at once she stood up. Jesus Christ and his disciples then left the resurrected girl with her astonished parents. 6. Lazarus of Bethany. According to John chapter 11, the third person that Jesus Christ raised from the dead was his friend Lazarus. Word had come to Jesus that Lazarus was ill, but Jesus did not go to Bethany to heal him. Instead, he told his disciples the sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it. A couple of days later, Jesus Christ told his disciples that Lazarus had died, but he promised a resurrection. I am going there to wake him up. When Jesus reached Bethany, 4 days after Lazarus' death, Lazarus' grieving sisters both greeted Jesus with the same words, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." Jesus, speaking to Martha, promised to raise Lazarus from the dead and proclaimed himself to the resurrection and the life. Jesus asked to see the grave. When he got to the place, he commanded the stone to be rolled away from the tomb, and he prayed and called in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." Just as Jesus Christ had promised, the dead man came out. The result of this miracle was that God was glorified, and many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary and had seen what Jesus Christ did believed in him. Others, however, refused to believe in Jesus Christ and plotted to destroy both Jesus and Lazarus. 7. Various saints in Jerusalem. According to Matthew chapter 27 verse 50 to 53, the Bible mentions some resurrections that occurred en masse at the resurrection of Jesus Christ. When Jesus Christ died, the earth shook, the rocks split, and the tombs broke open. Those open tombs remained open until the third day. At that time, the bodies of many holy people were raised to life. They came out of the tombs after Jesus Christ's resurrection and went into the holy city and appeared to many people. On the day that Jesus was raised to life, these saints were also raised and became witnesses in Jerusalem of the life that only Jesus can give. 8. Tabitha. According to Acts chapter 9 verse 36 to 43, Tabitha, whose Greek name was Dorcas, was a believer who lived in the coastal city of Joppa. Her resurrection was performed by the apostle Peter. Dorcas was known for always doing good and helping the poor. When she died, the believers in Joppa were filled with sadness. They laid the body in an upper room and sent for Peter, who was in the nearby town of Lydda. Peter came at once and met the disciples in Joppa, who showed him the clothing that Dorcas had made for the widows there. Peter sent them all out of the room and prayed. Then turning toward the dead woman, he said, "Tabitha, get up." She opened her eyes, and seeing Peter, she sat up. He took her by the hand and helped her to her feet. The overjoyed believers received their resurrected friend, and the news spread quickly throughout the city. Many people believed in the Lord as a result. 9. Eutychus. According to Acts chapter 20 verse 7 to 12, Eutychus was a young man who lived and died and lived again in Troas. He was raised from the dead by the apostle Paul. The believers in Troas were gathered in an upper room to hear the apostle speak. Since Paul was leaving town the next day, he spoke late into the night. One of his audience members was Eutychus, who sat down in a window and unfortunately fell asleep. Eutychus slipped out of the window and fell 3 stories to his death. Paul then looked down and threw himself on the young man and put his arms around him. Eutychus came back to life, went upstairs and ate a meal with the others. When the meeting finally broke up at daylight, the people took the young man home alive and were greatly comforted. All these people who were mentioned in the Bible died, and a prophet of Jesus Christ prayed for them and were resurrected, but they later died in their old age, making them die twice. You wouldn't want to miss the next episode, as it's coming your way in this time. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.